Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Timber!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Foul. I can't believe
Hello, once again. Good time of day, wherever you may be. This is episode number 152 of Americans Watching the Footy.
Oh, this is the Chikorita episode then?
No, we're not doing that. Oh, okay. But we are set for episode number 152, our round one preview. I'm your host, Ethan Castle.
I'm your co-host, Benjamin Castle. And in the background, you heard Brian Harambe taking his optimal post on the other side of the window blinds.
He was taking his talents to the windowsill. Normally we record our round preview probably on like the Tuesday night for us, so just usually about within maybe 24 hours of the round starting?
Yeah, usually like right after In the Mix comes out, so we have a better idea of selection, but that's more difficult this week, and so we're actually recording this very late Monday, early Tuesday American time, Tuesday night Australian time, because in a few hours, I'll be on a plane to San Diego.
City with a lot of history.
Yeah, discovered by the Germans in 1904.
They named it San Diego, which of course in German means a whale's vagina.
I'm not sure if that's going to be the title. We'll see. But I got accepted into the Master's in Teaching Credential program at the University of San Diego, and I'm going to go down there to just check out the campus, meet with some people in the department, get a tour, just see if it's a place that I could see myself, and if so, I may be there as early as June. So enjoy these in-person recordings while you can, I guess, Ethan.
Yeah. So with that, we are going to be doing a little bit more like speculation instead of, things that we know confirmed.
And it starts with the game that should open round one. It just should also open the entire season. Carlton and Richmond at the G, 7:30 p.m. local. For Americans, 4:30 a.m. Eastern, 1:30 a.m. Pacific. You may notice that the time difference is now smaller. We began our daylight saving time early Sunday morning, so we are now an hour into the future. The time difference is now 18 hours, and soon enough, I think first Sunday of April, it'll be back to 17 hours, where it'll stay for the rest of the footy season. This is another Fox Soccer Plus broadcast here in America, so get Watch AFL. Not sponsored, but we'd enjoy the sponsorship. Last year, these teams only met once, which was, of course, in round one, and it was the first season opening draw in 90 years. Frustrating watch, inaccuracy, tough fourth quarter in particular, but Tom Lynch scored the tying goal with 17 seconds left. Ethan, you were wrong about that game.
Well, kind of. I mean, in our preview, I said, hey, these teams both ended their seasons with horrible chokes last year. One of them has to win, right? I mean, it was more just asking a question.
Well, they didn't.
I am a fan of any game not involving Geelong or, except for like a game where Geelong needs someone to lose, ending in a draw. I'm a big fan of the draw. It's a rare outcome. And before last year, I didn't really care much about draws, but then I learned through Brian Barish about the song, so now all I want are draws.
Yes, thank you to the Barrackville Singers for making It's a Draw.
It's like all I care about, and after a draw, I can just like spam it and play it a billion times.
Yeah, I mean,
so watch. We're probably not going to have many, if any, this season, but I'm going to keep my hopes up.
Yeah, this will be the 29th straight head-to-head meeting between the Blues and Tigers at the MCG, going back to the 2007 opener. Obviously, for the Blues, the question is how to replace Sam Doherty. Where are all the magnets going to be moved there? Ollie Hollins did a good job sliding back into defense, somewhat of an inside accelerating role when we normally see him on the outside. I think Ollie will carry more of that role in round one. Was Moore your sleeper for the year? No, Moore was not. He was the first round pick at forward, and a name we discussed after the Geelong and Carlton scratch match. My Blues sleeper was Brody Kemp, and obviously waited to see more from him. I think I should have gone with Jack Carroll, who has got to be at the 22 now. I would think, unless the logic becomes, let's just have the most like-for-like replacement for Doherty, and then use Carroll as the sub again because he was so good in that role, which I don't think they do, but it's something to consider. I would see Carroll as a more likely sub also for his midfield ability and kind of versatility of inside and outside versus someone like Moyer. And even with the new rule, I still think that guys who are debuting would probably still benefit more from getting the full game. For Richmond, they should be getting all three of Tom Lynch, Dustin Martin, and Toby Nankervis back, so that'll help significantly. In terms of Nankervis, Sam Naismith was definitely outdone by Jared Witts in terms of quality of hitouts, and I imagine that would slide Samson Ryan out of the AFL side for now, as much as we like him. I saw Ryan as kind of fitting that Lynch mold as a ruck forward hybrid.
Yeah, he was one of the weaker links in this game, so...
Bright spot for Richmond that I'm not sure if we mentioned last time was Seth Campbell, the small forward from Tasmania, making his debut. That worked really well. And with continued kind of middle results from Morris Rioli Jr., I'm wondering if they might give another small forward a shot, maybe a return for Noah Cumberland, or Lee's gone. Steely Green. Steely Green. Steely Green.
Yeah, Cumberland is an interesting player. I would also make my case, of course, for Hugo Ralphsmith. Always enjoy his speed, and I think he can give them a flash that they need. But the biggest thing they need is, to just not get crushed in clearances like they did this past week.
Well, Dusty's likely to get consistent midfield time, and between that and the return of Nankervis, I feel more confident in the Tigers to draw a bit more even. I would still back Carlton for this game, and they're favored by 16.5. Is this a pretty easy tip for you?
I guess that seems fair. My question, though, well, actually, I just thought about it.
Yeah?
Is Cripps just going to run wild on them like Rowell did? Or is it just going to show how good Rowell is? What sort of switches does Uze make after round one or after opening round to prevent that happening again?
It's still weird to say opening round for us.
Yeah, I'm struggling to get used to it.
Yeah, that's a good question because I don't see a real natural tagger on Richmond's list.
I think Hugo could be a tagger.
I mean, he's got the motor for it. It's a matter of being physical enough where I'm not sure about it. I see Ralph Smith as just being able to run anywhere they desire. The other thing I completely expect out of this game is for one of Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay to go off again because I still don't think Josh Gibkiss will be up to speed, unfortunately. He was really exposed by Ben King and Jack Lukosius in the opening round on the Gold Coast.
I don't know if that's really Gibkiss's best role. I think of him as doing some work along the wings, utilizing his speed. I'm trying not to overreact to one game, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's an adjustment period just with guys finding their roles at Richmond.
And with Gibkiss having not played at any level for a full year, that's why I said you still need to get up to speed there.
This is not a very hot take. This is not even a room temperature take. Richmond's going to look very different around like the start of July or so than they do now, just in terms of who's in what spots in the lineup. I think it's going to be a very different team.
I think that take is already in the refrigerator.
Collingwood and Sydney at the MCG Friday night because within the first couple nights of round one, you have your flag ceremony and such. I still think, I like this for Collingwood because it'll definitely be their home crowd. It won't be like a 50-50 crowd like we had last year. It'll be very much like a Collingwood event. I'm sure Sydney will show out because their fans show up pretty well.
The strong South Melbourne base still just big enough crowds at the G. But yes, it's a Collingwood game with a G. It'll feel like their home game.
Yeah, the only time it doesn't is, you get like the 50-50 crowds maybe with like Richmond, Carlton, maybe Essendon. That's about it. This will be 1:40 a.m. our time Friday morning, 4:40 a.m. for the East Coast, and 7:40 p.m. locally. Remember, times got bumped back by 10 minutes this year?
Moved ahead by 10 minutes. That's what I meant, yeah.
Preponed? Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say, preponed.
Yeah, Indian English word, like just opposite postpone, prepone. You're moving it up.
Indian English words are awesome, especially, kindly do the needful.
Oh, yes. Fox Sports 2 for this one. Collingwood gets on the air again. So,
Yeah, so kindly do the needful and turn on Fox Sports too.
actually, Collingwood and Sydney both had their first 2 games on American networks now.
Swans are 1-0, Pies are 0-1. Last year, these teams played in round 8, a 29-point Collingwood win at the G, where Sydney kicked 6-12. On X score, Collingwood only won by a little over 7 points. Brody Majacek had 5 goals. The last came with the second left. The fourth one was the really cool one, the bicycle kick.
Yeah, with Nick Blakey trying to bring him down. That was Sydney and Collingwood's first game in Victoria head-to-head in a decade, and just the second in 15 years, so it's remarkable that they're actually getting 2 years in a row at the G. That was also one of Mason Cox's more noticeable games, just because Collingwood had been without a true ruck for a bit, and coming back from his ruptured spleen, he just solidified their structure a lot. The structural issues for Collingwood going into this one, though, are still more defensive, even with Jeremy Howe likely coming back and probably replacing last week's debutant Charlie Dean. I think it still shows just how much Nathan Murphy was the center of Collingwood's defensive structure around whom everybody else kind of had their role delegated. That tall one-on-one is still something that's really missing, and Howe's not the type to completely make up for that. Obviously, 2 notable meetings in 2022 between the Pies and Swans still fresh in our memories. Sydney snapped Collingwood's 11-game win streak in round 22 with a 3-goal showing from Buddy spearheading their efforts, and then the 1-point prelim with Callum Mills rushing behind after a goal line scramble in the final seconds. 2022's finals just delivered. And the games that kind of fell flat in terms of lack of drama, the Cats won, so they still delivered.
Other than Collingwood Freo.
Yeah, I wish David Mundy had gotten a better send-off. Did kick a goal in that one, though. There was a cool goal late in that one. I think Freddie?
Freddie!
And thinking about how Collingwood needs to function defensively, missing another tall, I think there's an obvious solution there in addition to Jeremy Howe. An obvious solution in the form of a premiership player.
Billy Frampton, who he was talked about during the Carlton-Brisbane game because he kind of just took up Harris Andrews' time.
Yeah, we've seen kind of that tag of a defender more and more since kind of the middle of 2023. We've seen it against James Sicily, against Jake Weaver, against Harris Andrews. I don't think there's one candidate for that in this game, but Frampton was one of the people who was able to do that well. You can have a good impact even if you don't get many touches. I think Frampton, though, will need to be cast in more of a real defensive role here, though. I think that's the biggest change there. And if you're trying to kind of fit him in, would it be John Noble drawing the short end of the stick there again?
I don't know. It seems like the possible candidates are Markov, Noble, and Dean. You could really go with any of those.
Well, Dean for Hal, but if Frampton's in, then would need to make way with another.
I guess you can take out someone smaller then, or you could just say, we'd rather play Frampton than Markov. If that's another idea.
Yeah. And additionally, we're just waiting for Finn McRae to get another opportunity. When's it happening? Are they, Scott Pendlebury clearly did not look up to speed on Saturday night. If they decide to be, but I doubt they would be cautious with him in their home opener, their flag game. But something to watch there. And I doubt Tom Mitchell will be the one to be subbed out again, especially if Pendlebury is in similar health to what he was last week.
On Sydney's side, probably just about unchanged. Matt Roberts was your rising star winner from the opening round, by the way.
Yeah, played between the halfback and midfield, extra defender at times. I was surprised by Roberts getting the nod, even with the high fantasy numbers. I was of the strong belief that it would be Blake House, and we'll talk more about him when the Ds come up here in terms of the Sunday games. Joe Lombardi was subbed out, and it was definitely more of a you suck sub on Thursday. But with Collingwood having their struggles against Talls last week, I think they would probably give him another shot.
You would have to think. Maybe you take him out and elevate Sam Wicks, but I think you give him another shot. I'm personally a big believer in Amarty's upside.
Yeah, and Wicks remains on the smaller side, obviously, 5'11", and so if you're really trying to maximize your advantage against Collingwood's backs, then I'd say, maybe keeping the whole thing the same and keeping Wicks as the sub if it doesn't work in you have to go smaller there with someone who's better lower to the ground.
Collingwood's favored by 10.5, which just makes me think, damn, bettors must be really high on GWS this year.
Is that it, or is it Collingwood playing at the G?
I don't know. That's also, they're playing round 22 at the SCG. This will be their first double up since 2013. Also, I want to say, I think this is one of the best looking matchups in the sport.
Collingwood and Sydney, along with North and Sydney.
Collingwood Sydney, because I think like the black and white makes the red and white pop, and it's cool because, you know, one is stripes, the other's kind of like a abstract-ish design thingy. Oh, wait. Sydney will wear their...
Yeah,
I guess if they're at the G, they'll probably wear the throwbacks, which is still fine, but I like it more in their regular uniforms.
Yeah, like we'll see in round 22. I think Sydney hosting Collingwood and Sydney hosting North. The red versus blue those are probably the two best-looking matchups. Soon enough, though, we'll have a bunch more good-looking matchups because we'll have green in the AFL soon. And no, it's not the Giants who are going to be the green team. Ever thought we needed more round 1 matchups locked in? Essendon and Hawthorn thought so. This will be their third round 1 meeting in 4 years, and they want to lock it in for the future.
I mean, it's a rivalry. I know it's not like what it was 20 years ago, but I think it would be kind of fun. I wouldn't be opposed. Like, it doesn't have any bearing on my well-being.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not what it was 40 years ago when they had some real dramatic finals meetings, including the 1984 grand final.
That said, things have gone well when the Cats have played Essendon round 1, all of, 2022 and 2022. So I wouldn't mind doing that again.
But in terms of the grand final meetings, Essendon beat Hawthorn to win the flags in both 1984 and 85, and they'll be celebrating those victories. 84, the famous late fourth quarter comeback. I think Tim Watson played a really big role in that, and then a blowout in 85. More recently, though, round 1 2021 was the first games that we really got glued to. I forget if that was on TV?
I think it was on TV,
but I think we had already purchased Watch AFL, I think, but that just reaffirmed our love for the sport. Essendon led by 40 late in the second quarter. Hawthorn narrowed it to 1 3/4 time, and Tim O'Brien had a game-winning goal with 86 seconds left. I remember Travis Blackley, the former baseball pitcher, just being so irate about that.
Yes, I believe the term he used was shitting down their leg.
Sounds right.
Last year in round 1, Essendon won by 59. Darcy Parish, 37 disposals, 13 clearances. Zach Merritt worked through a Finn McGuinness tag. Essendon pulled away in the third quarter, and we had some major frostball, which we could be in for a decent amount of this year because he's one of the few healthy Hawks right now.
We won't be seeing a great Parish display, though, because we won't be seeing him at all. Out a week or two, still recovering from a hamstring injury. But yeah, frostball could be on display a lot this year with the injuries to James Blank, Denver Granger Barras, Will McCabe, Will Day, Chaikwa Joth, etc. It's going to really fall on Frost and then, I guess, Ethan Phillips?
I guess.
I mean, he ought to be in line to make his debut, all things considered. Look, polished enough in the preseason outings to get that opportunity. Also, how did we forget? What else happened in round 1 last year? Who was the sub for Essendon?
Oh, yeah.
I think the loudest reaction to a sub coming on we've ever heard. We miss him already.
The theme for this game is just going to be a lot of injuries altogether, and for Essendon, it's not quite as long of a list as Hawthorn, but it's a significant group.
Along with Parish, Jordan Ridley is out with his quad injury, should be back within a month. Essendon's back structure getting redefined with him out, and also the club debut impending for Ben Mackay. At least he has a couple days off and will be at the G again. Questions on Dylan Shield and Sam Draper's availability. So Todd Goldstein, you're going to have a lot of ruck opportunities right away. Even though he, I think, grew up an Essendon fan, that's going to be a weird one for us, seeing him in any new colors.
Yeah.
And also wearing 17, that's not going to look right.
Yeah, I guess he was always 22. He should still be 22.
Sam Durham.
On Hawthorn's side, we mentioned already, Will Day's out with the foot.
And all the other defenders.
Yeah. We just learned Cooper Stevens is going to be out a couple weeks with an Achilles injury.
Not like they were going to select him anyway.
Dylan Moore will be back from mononucleosis, or as some of you call it, glandular fever.
or as we say, once again, the kissing disease.
You need like a cheesy 80s sitcom ooh sound effect.
Yeah, that would fit there. Were Dylan Moore and Phoenix Gothard going at it?
Possible. So within the community series, they managed a bunch of dudes that should be available. Bobby Orchol, Jack Ginnivan, Jack Gunston, Harry Morrison, Josh Weddle. It's going to be such a weird forward group. Joel, Ginnivan, and Gunston. And then you got Moore and Mitch Lewis.
Luke Bruce, obviously.
Maybe this is Mitch Lewis's Coleman year. I was hot on it a couple years ago, and he was hurt.
I would still find it far more likely for Charlie Curnow to just get a third in a row. Debut watch, by the way, for Nick Watson as well as Ethan Phillips. Looking forward to talking about them once they finally get their opportunities. With all the injuries in this one, I just find this very hard to make any sense of any line whatsoever. So sure, Essendon minus 5.5.
I probably would have stuck it out a little higher, but I mean, the guys they're missing are pretty significant. This could be a really fun game in the sense of we're going to get some surprise contributors and we're going to learn something new about some folks that we don't know much about.
I think we're going to learn a lot about Hawthorn's immediate depth, what Watson can do as kind of one of the smaller members of that midfield to half forward group at 170 centimeters, especially on Hawthorne's list that's small for that group because you've got big guys in there like Connor Nash and my sleeper pick for the year, Henry Hustwaite. Jai Sarong could be in the middle, but I imagine he'd be in there in more of a backline role as one of the prevailing taller options there. I didn't realize how tall he was either. So as high as we are on Hawthorne in terms of just kind of getting their list management right, we'll learn a lot about their immediate prospects in this game.
This could also be a total sickos game. Could end up just being a major blowout, or just could be really ugly with the lack of proven and experienced players and makeshift lineups. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's pretty high variance in a pretty fun way.
Like promising to be entertaining one way or the other. I guess we could have something kind of similar in terms of just seeing the young crop for North and when they go up to the Sydney Show round Saturday afternoon. 4:35 p.m. local time. For Americans, 1:35 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning, 10:35 p.m. Pacific Friday night. Another Fox Soccer Plus game. New look for North, obviously, with Zane Dersma and Colby McKercher making their debuts. Those have already been confirmed. And with no Jai Simpkins still recovering from the concussion that Jimmy Webster caused, they're going to get some big-time minutes right away. Maybe kind of off-contest minutes relying on clearance work from Luke Davies-Uniacke, and I guess Hugh Greenwood would probably slot in there. I think Greenwood still got a lot to give, and he was always just kind of the next veteran up in that midfield. So he's got an important sort of mentorship and on-ball role here.
Hey, I know you were talking about this, not as if it's going to be all that intriguing, but I'm actually kind of interested in this from a North perspective.
Oh, I am too. That's why
I just want to see, what the hell are these guys going to look like, And hopefully it'll take away noise from, Alistair Clarkson yelling at somebody. Oh, no.
Would you not call somebody a cocksucker if they bumped your player like Jimmy Webster did? Would you not call them worse?
I mean, coaches probably shouldn't be going after other teams' players. Probably should have, I think it should be, go after, at least say it directly to their coach. We probably should have gone to Ross Lyon and said, hey, keep your guys in line or whatever. But I get it. I get it in this case.
And continuing with what the hell is North going to look like? What the hell are their backs going to look like now that Ben Mackay's not there? I mean, your centerpiece there could very well be my sleeper Josh Goder. How much of a central role does Toby Pake have right away if he comes in? A delisted free agent having been on the Swans list.
It's pretty amazing. The guy who was really a non-factor at the Swans seems to be pretty involved already in the picture at North.
I mean, did very, very well last year at Glenelg, helping them to the Sandhill flag, really reviving his AFL hopes with that.
Also, I just love Toby Green versus Toby Pink. I just thought about this for the first time.
Easy Photoshop potential there, getting them to wear the right colors.
Well, wait, no, if you put them right next to each other, just realize with green and pink, Cosmo and Wanda, you ain't slick.
Where
We're going to play Australian rules football.
If we get the two next to each other, I really want to have some fun with the images and the Fairly Odd Parents reference. Let's keep that in mind.
Let's get Butch Hartman to sketch out someone else's work and call it his own because he's good at that.
Giants will have to make a change with Callan Ward out 6 to 8 weeks after suffering an AC joint injury.
He tried to play on from it, and the umpires were like, no, your shoulder's out of place.
When I saw that at first, I thought I was looking more at like the back of his shoulder and thought he just like had a bunch of skin peeled off or something that was kind of mostly covered up by his jersey. I'm not sure if that was a thing or if there was like, or what had happened, but the whole thing was rough. And like, I would say credit to him for trying to play through it, but that's not something that you expect out of anyone. It's pretty amazing that he did that, but that should be by no means the expectation. The commentators noted it might have been one of those things where like, you just, you're on adrenaline in the moment, you don't feel it. And then afterwards, reality kind of sets in. Like, oh, fuck, why did I do that? Yeah.
Here's an interesting one on the injury report. Finn Callahan is questionable not because of any Achilles complaint or anything like that, but because he stepped on a nail on the beach.
So both Sydney teams have had some fun on the beach lately.
Yeah, between that and Brody Grundy getting stung by Big Lenny and living.
Looks like Harry Perryman is ready to go with his hamstring.
Double dose of Harry's for the Giants then.
And then Isaac Cumming had a setback with his quad, so he's out 4 to 6 weeks. Also, this should be Josh, not Jake, Kelly's 200th game.
Ethan looked over at me during that.
Yeah, I will get those confused. I'm better on telling the Bergmans apart than the Kellys who aren't even related to each other. Miles Bergman plays for Port, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we could see Bergman in this one. Do you remember much about this meeting in 2023? There was something important in common in terms of who was not there for North.
In your notes here, you mentioned Jai Simpkin. I remember Blundstone Arena just being mostly empty, and GWS won by 28. And I just kind of progressively pulled away.
Just dominated from stoppage the whole way. Not only was Simpkin concussed, so was Greenwood.
Brian Harambe has a lot to say about this game, which I think is good.
Brian, are you really taking North to cover here?
I mean, I might take him to cover 45.5. Let's factor in what weather's going to be like. Should be fine. Looks like they're going to get some rain Thursday and Sunday. Also, Melbourne weather throughout the week, in case you were wondering, should be pretty comfortable. Might be some light rain at some point, but should be good footy weather. These teams drew back in 2021 at Blundstone. Don't remember much about it, except someone had like a really long kick after the siren that wasn't close. Because remember I had said...
Was it Taron Thomas?
I'm not sure. Because remember I had said, like, we haven't had a real miss after the siren. We've had like just those attempts that were really, really long. And
like Dion Prestia against the Swans last year. Or 2022, I guess.
Aha, it was Adam Kennedy.
Oh, okay. I thought Thomas was involved with that somehow. Maybe it was just that he was playing well because he was back in Tasmania. Won't be involved in this one, clearly. This is the team's first meeting in Sydney since 2020, and just their 4th overall in the Giants' 12 years.
Yeah, GWS has only hosted these guys 4 times, which is kind of hard to believe, but this is a pretty common alternate site game in general.
5 games at Blundstone and 1 in Canberra. But the Giants had never beaten North at home in 4 tries.
Also, don't forget, and we can now say this because at the time of recording last week, I'm not sure if it was already NG Stadium.
But yeah, now it is.
Okay, is NG a baby talk word or is it a French sounding thing?
I think it's a French energy company.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is French, which is funny because, the Giants say never surrender and the French, well, they're French. They surrender.
Bonjour, you cheese-eating surrender monkeys!
All right, because we're near the middle of the episode here, it makes sense for us to, plug everything right now, especially if you did happen to just hear an ad if things work properly. So we are collectively on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, at Americans Footy. You'll see us give reminders about new episode releases and just other thoughts on Instagram, and we'll be live reacting to games as we always do on Twitter. We initial those tweets so you know which one of us is speaking, because it can be weird for 2 people to share an account, and it's better than one of us always doing everything in all caps.
Or just one of us doing everything lowercase and one of us properly capitalizing stuff.
Or just like the weird toggle case thing where it's the reverse.
Yeah, I mean, there are different ways. I think this is the best way.
Ryan Harambe just joined us by jumping on Ethan's bed. He's on Instagram, a cat named Ryan. In terms of relevant social media, my handle's BenjaminHK01. Ethan's is Castle Media. You ought to know by now that we spell our names with K, and that working too hard can give you a heart attack. Ethan looked at me, and I knew immediately, I needed to do the moving out parentheses Anthony's song reference. I guess we pick things up with the Saturday night games.
Note that this is games plural. This is our only overlap of the round. There's no other overlap, in part because the Sunday scheduling is really good. The only other way we could have avoided an overlap at some point
Is to just start games way earlier.
or to have Wednesday footy, which really wasn't that popular when it was tried.
Right, 2022 opener, D's and Dogs didn't get great crowds. I mean, that wasn't the type of game to get great crowds just because it's smaller fan bases. That's also why I like ushering in the year with Carlton and Richmond, because Big Four fan bases are always there. You ready to see what the Joel Selwood stand looks like?
Yes, although I am going to miss construction guy. I hope. First off, there needs to be a pregame ceremony for all the people who have helped, just like honor them briefly. Second, have construction guy like right in the middle of the stand, like the most likely place a ball's going to get kicked. And unlike people in South Australia, he should touch that ball.
Good reference.
I'm going to editorialize here for a sec. In case you needed a reminder how out of touch all these supposed health experts were.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Please remember the do not touch that ball. I understand that sometimes the ball goes into the stands.
This was the South Australian health minister?
Yes, these people are insane. I don't share my personal views much here, but health officers suck is one that I'm very, very passionate about. Anyway, Geelong, St. Kilda, Joel Selwyn stand. Hopefully this place is packed.
About 40,000 now the capacity. 7:30 p.m. Eastern time in Australia. For Americans, 4:30 a.m. Eastern, 1:30 a.m. Pacific on Fox Soccer Plus and Watch AFL. This matchup last year was a forgettable one for the Cats in round 23, as if it hadn't been solidified yet that they were missing out on finals.
It hadn't been because it was, in theory, a winnable game, and then just
Blitzovs was already out. I think it was pretty clear once he went down, I think, against Frio.
Yeah, but just got crushed in the midfield, ended up losing by 33. It was nice in a way to just have a normal loss instead of a scarred for life, or one of those really frustrating games where it was like, we get behind early, had that stretch where we gave up like 5 goals in a row and then made a comeback push and then gave up a goal to someone who absolutely should never score one. And then we end up losing by like about, say, 16, 17 or so, because that happened a lot. It was just like, we got beat, whatever.
Really should have seen Toby Conway debut in that game.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Yeah, Rowan Marshall just kind of said, "Hi, I'm here. You're going to remember me for this one." At least Brian Myers broke the home and away assist record. And these teams will meet round 23 at Marvel this year as well.
What has me optimistic entering this game, the injury list is short. Cam Guthrie's out 6 to 8 weeks with his quad. Gary Rowan's out 4 to 6 weeks with his hamstring. He's also had some issues like setbacks with some back injuries. Also, he had sex and has kids.
Yeah.
I guess he had sex more like 10 months ago now.
Yeah. So
it's nice to have a mostly healthy team to work with.
With Guthrie and Rowan out, this just feels like a perfect spot for a Sean Manna round 1 debut.
There are decisions to be made with him. I think Jai Clark absolutely needs to be in. It would also be great if his first... Actually, hang on. He played in a game as the sub last year or something.
And got hurt.
Yeah, he played in the loss to Richmond last year as the sub. But yeah, his first game at home, the successor to the Joel Selwood role, the opening of the Joel Selwood stand, it would be too perfect.
Have him there at that first center bounce, please, and then have Sean Manna on the outside of that, taking up like a Brad Close-like role, if not linking up to Close further downfield, playing opposite him.
I didn't watch the community series that closely, but the stuff I saw out of Jai Clark, just some of the chase down tackles and things like that, it was like, that is something we missed last year.
Just like Now I get the comparisons. And man, I've watched pretty closely in both the Carlton Scratch match and the Community Series. I'm just continuing to be impressed by him and thinking of him as a worthy successor to Isaac Smith wearing number 7.
One guy who wasn't in the Community Series was Brandon Parfit, who had a couple of brief flashes, but was mostly a frustrating player last year. I wouldn't mind if he's still on the outside looking in. It's tough, though, because you often wonder, man, wouldn't more consistent time help him? But then he has games where he just vanishes. I don't know. This is really the first time I've thought about him in a minute. I thought a lot more about Ollie Dempsey because he was so good in the Community Series. I would guess he'll be in. One thing that I'm really not certain about at all is what do we do with the ruck situation, especially facing Rowan Marshall? I'm going to beat the Toby Conway drum, but there might be a management plan between balancing him and Reece Stanley. How often do you want to play both of them versus just one?
With Blitzov's already in as well.
Yeah, I would love to see both of them in.
Blitzov's being there just ends up complicating it in this case.
Good problem to have, though. But yeah, you want to be able to put different guys on Marshall. And if Stanley's in there, which I would guess he'll be, it could kind of be a referendum on him. How do you line up against one of the game's best at this position?
And what can you show forward as well when you're not in the ruck?
I am a Reece Stanley supporter. I know there are a couple of people online that are much bigger fans of him, but he's 33, which in footy age is very, very old. So that's something to pay attention to.
Going back to the younger side of the list, Connor O'Sullivan, back or wing in this game?
Back, I would think. I think we have enough guys that can play the wing that stick him in the defense.
Especially with the continued concerns over Jed Buse and Jake Kolajashny, one of whom will be inexplicably in the side.
I mean, I would rather have Buse in there out of those two. I've made these points before.
Okay, are both of them actually going to be in then?
I don't know. What I do know is the other reason I'm optimistic for this game
is that the Saints have so many more outs in their best 22.
Yeah. Now, I don't want you to think I'm cheering for injuries, but having an opponent with a bunch of significant players that are going to be out, I'm not going to be upset.
Well, you've got the 7-game suspension for Jimmy Webster for the aforementioned high bump of Jai Simpkin. Just a ridiculous act, and his family's comments did not help. But who else is out? Dan Butler, ankle. Hunter Clark, calf, cannot catch a break. Paddy Dow won't make his Saints debut yet because of a knee injury. On the back end, Dougal Howard's out with his hamstring injury, so more important role maybe in the back for Josh What's a Battle?
What's a battle?
I guess. I mean, Cal Wilkie obviously is already going to be really important.
Exactly. I mean, he defines that back line. He was deservedly an All-Australian last year.
He was excellent last year. The question now is, can he keep it up? Or was that kind of a one-hit wonder? We'll see if, it's got to do with the whole, if there's a Ross Lyon factor there or what it is.
I think it also means a really important role, maybe more defensive for Riley Bonner.
What's a Bonner?
A couple Whatses now in this Saints team. And Bonner's ball movement ability was real noticeable in their preseason. I did not think that he would be regarded so highly after getting dropped by Port. But reports on him have been solid. So he'll likely be in for his club debut, as will Liam Henry. And when I was looking at the lists before this episode, I realized that Liam Henry's headshot makes it look like Gary Busey is trying to play Liam Henry.
Yeah, he's not photogenic.
Not in this one anyway.
He's a much improved player, but this was how he found his role. But I gotta say,
not a good headshot.
Not good. Also, pretty significantly, Jack Sinclair is doubtful, I'd say, with a calf injury, and Marcus Windhager is also doubtful with a hand injury. I mean, if you're missing one of those two, or even both, that's a big blow,
especially against a team who's still trying to work out how deep their midfield is. And with Windhager being able to probably take out one of those veterans as the strong tagger he is, also means we probably won't be able to get much of a human centipede if he's out. Jack Steele definitely has that physical tagging ability, but I think if Steele's in there, he could probably just overpower some of the younger guys in there already. And if Windhager is out, probably a more center square role then for Darcy Wilson, who can flex from the midfield to forward pretty easily. He's going to be making his debut, pick 18 from this past draft. Geelong favored by 11.5, considering the injury doubts, matters which won't be resolved by the time we're done recording this, but maybe by the time this episode is uploaded, as I'll be editing it probably tomorrow night from San Diego. I'd probably put this more like, 16.5. Is that generally I like us at home, even though for a lot of years we've been a shaky round one team. Is that you assuming that all those players for the Saints are going to be out? I'm thinking at least one of Sinclair or Windhager will be out. It sounds like both are trending towards out, but not a guarantee. I would be surprised if both of them play. I don't feel great about this game. Don't get me wrong. I don't feel great heading into any game, but after seeing that injury list, I definitely felt a little bit more encouraged. People First Stadium, money for footy, the site of the Suns and Crows, and all sorts of time zones in this one because fun stuff with, yes, still South Australia being 30 minutes ahead of Queensland. Ooh, we've got multiple games with a lot of time zones this round, now that I think about it. Yeah, this is one of them. 7:10 p.m. local on the Gold Coast, but 7:40 in Adelaide. Like, of all the silly Australia things, I think this is the silliest. Much sillier than border time. Oh no, that's just cool. We're still waiting for a community series game in UCLA. Look, the southern and western sides face off in preseason outings pretty much every year. Bring one of them to a border town. Give those roadhouses some good business. Roadhouse. For Americans, 5:10 a.m. Eastern, 2:10 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports 2. I would have thought that Geelong would have gotten the American TV slot instead. Yeah. Maybe they're just really... these are sides that are kind of popular to be backed in this year between... Maybe, I think it's probably more to do with, the start time. I'm going to try to figure out what other programming is on that could have something to do with this. I can't really think of anything at 2 a.m. unless they're showing, NRL before or something. I don't know. I'm not opposed because it means that can be on in the background. Maybe it's also just because you get more Fox Footy broadcast. Okay, no, there's, they're re-showing a Pac-12 tournament game until 1:30. And then from 1:30 to 2, they're showing a Road to Euro 2024 thing. I think it's more, though, just this maybe the Fox Footy broadcast as opposed to 7. No, that hasn't had any bearing on anything for a while. We say that and then we realize, it still has. No, I think it's just got to do with they're showing the replays of stuff until 1:30. So just because of what American programming is on, although they're also showing bowling before that. So it's not like they have any live American programming after 7 p.m. I don't know. Fox Sports 2 airs a lot of tape delayed stuff and reruns of mine. Yeah. Well, the live game they're going to get the replay of from Fox Sports 1. Okay. It's on live on FS1 from 7:30 to 9:30, and then on replay on FS2 from 11:30 to 1:30. Well, why are we going over so much about the American programming here? Because originally our audience, the goal of this show was more to introduce the sport to more Americans, and instead we've just connected with Australians, which is also cool. Our audience is probably 2-1 or 3-1 Australians to Americans. Yeah, and it's most of the Americans are honorary Australians, not just Americans are ooh, what's this sport? This is cool. We need to figure out how to better cater to that introductory crowd more. Anyway, People First Stadium. This will be one of the games, and I talked about in our recap, I'm really interested to see what effect the opening round has for teams that are playing again versus teams that haven't played yet. So that's going to be one of the things that I certainly track this week. This is one of those 4 games. We talked about one earlier with GWS and North, and the other 2 are on Sunday. Yeah. So here's the other thing. What's the attendance going to be like? Yeah, it's not going to be as big a draw. I hope they get 15,000. I expect it'll be more 12. I feel like 15 is still a real big ask here. It will give us a sense of what sort of momentum there is behind the Suns. I'm sure there will be some Crows fans that make the trip. It's not hard to convince people to go to Gold Coast. This was a double up last year. They played in Darwin, where the Suns won by 25 after getting behind early, then taking the lead, blowing that lead, and then finished really strong. Yeah, they scored 5 of the last 6. with Jack Vinda Lukosius kicking 5. He was either really on or almost non-existent in pretty much every game last year, and this was one of the on games for him as well as for Bailey Humphrey. We noticed he was having so much fun up there. Like, I remember he was high-fiving fans along the boundary, like, during the game. He really embraced the trip up to the Tiwis that they took as well. Just was very engrossed in all the club endeavors. He got a bit more of the ball than I expected in the first half, at least, Saturday afternoon, then was quieter in the second half. I think hovered around a dozen touches overall. So where he fits in there and how much time he actually gets in the forward 50 is still a real question. Then round 21, the Crows leveled the season series with a 28-point win at home, 5-0 in the first quarter, with Gold Coast being surprisingly weak, allowing goals off ruck contests. With Jared Witts there, that just seems like a real letdown, even up against another hit ball ruck like soon-to-be Dr. Riley O'Brien. Also didn't help that Tuke Miller was out for that game because he had grabbed Dane Zorko's nuts the previous week. I feel like that's just a completely forgotten story from last year.
Yeah, I remembered it when I finally watched that Brisbane Frio game.
This game's also going to be Isaac Rankin's return to the Gold Coast, and he will get booed by all 15 people.
It looked like there were a decent amount of actual Suns fans. It seemed like about a 50-50 split last week, which is good. Like the Giants fan base, though it's small, has an identity as this fun troll team. The Suns, like, their fans really don't have any sort of, like, brand or identity at all, and I'd like that to change. I want to know, like, what is the average Suns fan? Nobody knows.
And we don't want the stands just to be filled up with like 20,000 cutouts of Dustin Martin in a Suns kit.
1 or 2 of those, great.
4.
All next to each other. I wouldn't expect the Suns to make any changes this week unless there's some late injury news. I mean, last week went pretty well. Maybe you get a different sub in instead of McPherson. I mean, I think he fits for the sub role because you can use him in a few different spots, though. Crows, it looks like Daniel Kirkman will not be in the lineup to start the year. He'll be down in the 2s.
I guess that means that Mark Keane might be recovered from his concussion.
I mean, he's not a guaranteed lineup spot even with that.
Based on that wording, I almost would think that he would be in over Curtin, especially with how solid he was in the final few games last year, and with the guys who you would have previously thought to be above him out, if not somewhere else altogether now.
There will also be a possible return here with Chris Burgess as the likely replacement for Riley Philthorpe.
So a double return then, with Rankin also.
I feel like the Crows are a team where you could have like some list selection that's totally out of left field, so hopefully this will be up before they do that and we can sound smart.
This will probably be up before you usually just see the Thursday one come in like our Wednesday morning. So hopefully that'll be up by then. I think it just depends on when I decide to call it a night.
The Suns are favored by 5.5.
We get our lines from Bovada, by the way, which is why we look so much at the spread rather than like dollar amount.
Yes. Also, the spread is just what I care more about.
Definitely more of an American thing than just kind of looking straight at the money line.
I hope this is a compelling game. I hope that like I start celebrating a Geelong win by watching a good finish in this, but I get the feeling this is another high level of variance game. Yeah. This is one of those games where I don't know who's going to win, but I can see it being not close either way.
Well, if the home team does prevail, we've got a certain soundbite planned.
Or if we have other ways to use it too.
By the way, they're at the top of the ladder for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Yes, only 8 teams played. No, we don't care. It's a chance to celebrate the mighty Sun.
The mighty Sun.
Whatever's going to happen in this game, there's going to be overreactions. It's either, oh my God, Dimma, Suns, greatest team ever, or, oh my God, Crows, or just, oh my God, Suns are frauds. I am hoping the Crows win this game because A, the 2-0 Suns discourse would be annoying, and B, I don't want to go into Adelaide facing an 0-1 Crows team. I mean, that's not a game I love our chances in either way, but I'd like our chances more if they came in with a win already.
From the Suns to Sunday, Melbourne and the Dogs has become a round 1 fixture since their grand final meeting. It's the 3rd year in a row this is happening. No big milestone in this game. Last year it was the 3,000th league game at the MCG. And the Demons just kind of repeated a lot of stuff that had worked in that grand final meeting with clearance success and Max Gawn being everywhere en route to a 50-point win. It was one of the few times that Tim English wasn't the most prominent ruck on the ground.
Well, there was one thing they didn't repeat from that grand final. Gawn getting tackled by Caleb Daniel. Other than that, pretty similar game.
How in the world did Gawn getting tackled by Caleb Daniel throw the game in the D's favor? That still blows my mind that was like the last great thing for the Dogs. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. This will be a 1 p.m. sharp bounce, so 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific for Americans. I love this game time just from an American perspective. 7 p.m. is the perfect sit-down time for Americans. It's like when so many of our games start, especially on the West Coast, either 7 or 7:30. So for these few weeks there where we have daylight savings in America and in Australia, I'm going to embrace this.
On one hand, I love it. On the other hand, I don't, because I like to be able to really lock in on games and not like casually watch during dinner. Maybe I'll have to strategically time dinner with halftime or some shit.
Sounds right.
But yeah, earlier footy is cool. I did say I love this, just the spacing out of Sunday games.
And I think a lot of that is helped by going to the West at the very end, which I don't like all the time, but it really works here. Another thing I remember about that game last year in round one was a really involved game from Tate Chandler. 7 tackles at his first goal, just the start of a season where he really elevated his presence in a Melbourne lineup and found himself in a permanent spot. And even with Kazi Pickett back, there's definitely the space for him to operate and be independent. Kazi is more kind of bursting through at times. Yes, the forward pocket ability, but also I like him kind of going back into the center square to reinforce some contests off bounces. Whereas
he's fast enough that he can do that and then still do stuff in the forward 50.
Yeah, whereas Chandler doesn't have that same sort of explosiveness, but it's still a really sound kick all over the field and toward goal.
Jake Bowie is out with his shoulder injury.
Broken collarbone.
All right, close enough.
8 weeks.
So what do you do there? Do you move Christian Salem back into an offensive role, or do you possibly bring in someone new, such as Marty Hoare?
Someone new, but also someone old, considering it's his return to the list after a couple years away, a couple of VFL Team of the Year honors for him. I think putting Hoare in the back six will also allow Blake Howes to more easily advance on the wing, where I thought he should have gotten the Rising Star nomination just for his work kind of going toward the boundary in the back 50, starting at fullback, but unafraid to advance. I think if you have Hoare there as a fullback, it will allow for Howes to be more flexible and really accelerate play on the wing, because you got plenty of speed from the new crop of Demons on the outside. Jack Billings was the sub last week. I would rather have him in right away. Maybe downgrade Bill Laurie to the sub role instead. And while Laurie could be an odd man out anyway, with Harrison Petty and Lockie Hunter close to returning, where does that put Josh Shackey as well? Because he was the reserve ruck and was present at half forward, but didn't really do anything spectacular. With Jacob Van Rooyen getting more time in the middle third, I would expect that you would just have Van Rooyen be the backup ruck and just kind of continue what he did otherwise in the rest of the game. And that wouldn't disrupt things too much there.
Yeah, I think Shackey's an obvious candidate to come out. I like him, but he struggled. I would still consider using Petty as a defender. I know it's not really a like-for-like thing with Bowie, but
I think they're really committed to Petty as forward. If they're committed to Salem in the midfield as well, I think it's just kind of chain reaction there that just Marty Hoare seems like the obvious choice.
I guess so.
So now watch us be totally surprised and proven very wrong.
On the Bulldogs front, they've already confirmed 3 club debuts: Lachlan Bramble, Nick Caulfield, and James Harms.
John Amos is going to be so confused as to who to support.
What do they do with Sam Darcy?
Does he even get in?
I think you got to put him in. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'd be shocked if Riley Sanders doesn't debut. Defensively, I don't know if there's room for former cricketer Alex Keith or also former cricketer James O'Donnell.
If you're putting Darcy in, especially with his ability to flex between 50s. I think that would be very tough to put them in also, unless maybe you decide Darcy could be that weird tall sub.
I mean, I would think you got to just get him in your 22 just off of sheer upside. I wouldn't think they'd already see him in just a sub role at this point.
And between Keith and O'Donnell, I would imagine Keith would be the one to go because O'Donnell's still recovering from his ankle injury.
Bailey Dale coming back from a hamstring. There's some questions here, and
If Dale is out, I feel like that Daniel's role will have to shift more toward kind of his previous halfback spot rather than half forward and into the forward 50. Caleb Daniels, one of the most versatile smalls in the league, and I still find it surprising that A, he was moved toward the forward half more last year, and B, it kind of worked. But with Dale out, it may be a necessity for him to slide back.
if this wasn't the Dogs, I would think like, oh, look at all this versatility and flexibility. But because it's the Dogs,
How is Luke Beveridge going to mismanage this?
yeah, like, I think with Darcy in particular. Now, I know last year he also just had awful injury luck, but
Did he have a hole in his lung?
yes.
Sam Tyrod Taylor Darcy?
No, because I don't think the team doctor stabbed him.
Fair enough. Demons are favored by 7.5 as we record this. I would back in Melbourne, I think. And also the designated home team has won each of the last 4 meetings going back to the grand final. So
I like Melbourne here. Remember, well, I'm concerned about their defense. Maybe Aaron Naughton just absolutely eats in this game. Or maybe Cody Waitman. I don't know.
I would like to see Waitman kind of being a pest to Jake Lever as Robbie Fox was last week.
I could see someone for the Dogs going off for 6 or 7 goals. I think there are a few different options there.
Jamara's had 5 against the D's before. That was round 19, 2022 while I was in Oregon.
But I also thought Melbourne was one Kazi Pickett away last week.
You said a Kazi and a Harrison Petty away.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking Harrison Petty more in the defensive role. So, while I'm concerned about their defense, I like their forward line for this game, and I will go with the D's.
Port hosting the Eagles. West Coast has had some interesting graphics posted where it is supposed to be like this Phantom Eagle thing positioned behind the players, and it just looks like all of them have died and gained wings. Was especially fitting for Elliot Yeo, considering all of his troubles with injury. So we'll see how many games he can get through because he can actually make the midfield look decent if he's in, even with Elijah Hewitt having no timeline whatsoever.
This is the other really fun time zone game. So it'll be a 3:30 p.m. local bounce. It'll be 4 p.m. in Victoria and New South Wales. It'll be 1 p.m. in Western Australia. It'll be 6 a.m. in Serbia. It'll be 1 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States. And it'll still be Saturday here at 10 p.m.
On Fox Sports 2, because yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like when the really bad Buffalo Sabres teams would get a bunch of TV time, and I thought the logic was like, yes, you too can play hockey.
Well, here, yes, you too can play footy. And also Harley Reid's got to be making his debut. I'd be shocked if he weren't. Now watch him suffer some sort of injury in the couple of days before this. Oh, boy. This is their 3rd straight year only meeting at the Adelaide Oval, the Eagles and Power.
Hey, you get your home game against the Lions. Don't be greedy.
I'm not. I'm just saying it for what it is. Last year was a 40-point Port win as they scored 6-1 in the second quarter, with Willem Drew being one of the most prominent figures. He started out tagging on Tim Kelly and then remembered, oh yeah, I could do other things too, and somehow got no votes despite 25 disposals and an octopus, and just a really sound game overall. It was another one of those games that confirmed Darcy Byrne-Jones' worth as a pressure forward too.
You know, if the Eagles were healthier,
you would consider to pick them to cover this 47.5.
No, I just think this could be an interesting game for 3 quarters.
3 quarters. Really? 3?
Yeah.
Man, 2.5 is a stretch for me.
This could also just be 96-18 by halftime.
But yeah, for the Eagles, Reed healthy for the moment, Yo healthy for the moment, Bailey J. Williams to be the main ruck because Matt Flynn has a long-term hamstring injury, and I guess Ruben Gindi will be one of the most important people there to whom Bailey J. might tap because he's good to go after being concussed. I was really liking his willingness to tackle last year and put on some much-needed pressure that the Eagles had struggled with for really the prior 2 seasons, even as they were on the decline in 2022 was noticeable enough to me.
I want to mention that Elliot Yo at the moment is healthy. I say at the moment. By at the moment, I mean on March 12th at 1:16 a.m. and 10 seconds Pacific time. And I mention that with such specific detail because there's always a chance he gets injured. So there's a good chance it happens between recording and publishing or between that and game time. So just always be skeptical there. You know, I gotta say, I do have a lot less intrigue on the Eagles than I do on North because North looks like such a different team this year compared to last, whereas the Eagles, I mean, outside of Harley Reid,
Clay Hall, and, well, no Tyler Brockman yet.
well, we'll see. I guess you'd consider him questionable for this game. What sucks much more is not having Liam Ryan sucks way more just because he's so fun to watch. Hamstring injury.
I could just kind of break open lines really all over the field. There's no steadying presence of Dom Sheed either. It's just, look, it's the Eagles. If you think they're going to have their full best 22 in for any game this year, I got some oceanfront property in Alice Springs that I can sell you.
On port side, Zach Butters is good to go, coming back from an ankle injury. I'm going to try to watch him much more closely this year because, you know, in the last couple years, what with us now doing our own Brownlow, I'm going to have to pay closer attention to him. And what I really am going to try to do watching each of these games is, you know, ask myself throughout the game, like, who are the most important players?
And how is Butters kind of differentiating himself from the rest of the midfield? How did he and Connor Rosie work in tandem? New captain Connor Rosie, new father to be Connor Rosie. Busy summer for him.
Injury list is pretty short for Port. Ollie Lord's out with some sort of knee or tibia injury.
Yeah, that could be longer term there.
Yeah, and that sucks because I think he was wasn't he my sleeper?
You considered him. I think you went with someone. I forget who you went with.
Yeah. And then Sam Powell-Pepper's out suspended until round 5. But other than that, it
would be what former Geelong player Quentin Narkle as well.
But he's still a couple weeks away with a... Oh, wait. Well, I saw, according to Fox, but now according to Michael Whiting, he's already been cleared, so...
Who knows?
I don't know. Well, I'm just gonna...
Well, where does he fit is the real question.
I guess we'll just call him questionable. Should be club debuts for this new backline of Asava Radagalea and Brandon Zerk-Thatcher. And I think all signs point to Ivan Soldo as the number 1 ruck. There are some questions at the forward line, just with Jeremy Finlayson and Mitch Georgiadis not playing in the Community Series. I don't know how much that was resting guys. Georgiadis was coming off an injury of some sort. I forget which.
ACL.
Oh, duh. But yeah, I think there's some... This is another one where I think we could be in for a strange list decision or two. So I would put the 2 South Australian teams as the most likely to really throw us for a loop.
We conclude the round out west, as we so often do, with Freo hosting Brisbane. Ethan, you finally watched their round 21 meeting.
Yes, I did.
And you were entertained?
Yeah. Really, like, if we were looking at time of possession, Freo really dominated that, but Brisbane was able to make more of their opportunities in general. It was a very good game from Hayden Young, in addition to the typical excellence out of Caleb Sarong. Back in round 7, we had... Was that the game? Which amazing goal? Was that the Ashcroft goal?
That was the Ashcroft goal of the year game. Yes. Inside of the boot, Jackie Chan goal.
I just remember Freo being woefully unprepared to match up with the Lions in that game.
Definitely solved it more the second time with...
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was by the time Hayden Young had moved to the midfield and put a clamp on Lockie Neal for the final 3 quarters. I found it very surprising just how quickly Young made the move from long-kicking halfback to tagger, but it's worked ever since. And if the Dockers are to do anything to save Justin Longmuir, I think Young would have to be one of their best. This will be a 3:50 p.m. local game in Burswood, 5:50 p.m. for the Queensland crowd, 6:50 p.m. for the Pacific States of Australia. For Americans, 3:50 a.m. Eastern, 12:50 a.m. Pacific on Fox Soccer Plus.
No Sunday overlap. It's beautiful.
Enjoy it while you can. This is the 6th meeting at Optus Stadium between these teams already, and it's their 4th straight year meeting there. And the only double up out of those years was 2023, which makes it even odder that the Lions are coming back to Optus later in the year to play the Eagles.
For Frio, Luke Jackson's going to be your only ruckman because Sean Darcy's out with a knee injury. Nathan O'Driscoll's out with a knee injury as well, which sucks. No timeline there. Heath Chapman, do you still think about him in the tub at all?
I mean, considering how little I actually take baths, no.
Do you think about him in the shower?
Yeah.
Well, he's out still a couple more weeks with his hamstring injury. It does seem like Brennan Cox will be back from his leg injury and Michael Frederick will be back from his hamstring.
Freddie!
Speaking of Frederick, when I watched their loss to Port Adelaide, he had a couple of really nice goals, even as they were getting beat considerably.
Frederick and Tom Emmett, my sleeper, were the standouts from that game. Did you really pay attention to Tom Emmett at all during those Frio games that you missed?
He seemed to just fit well within the forward line. It didn't seem like, I'm sure had I watched that game longer ago, it would have been like, wow, who is this guy? Instead, you had mentioned him a bunch of times, so I kind of knew what was coming. It was like, yeah, he looks like he belongs.
And fits as like a small to mid-sized pressure forward too, which the Dockers have really needed because Bailey Banfield just hasn't been that yet for him. In terms of more outside jobs for the Dockers, especially with Nathan O'Driscoll out, opportunities open up for Jeremy Sharp and Neil Erasmus to maybe step up into a role in the 22. Erasmus has had a lot of time as the sub.
And then also possibly Oscar McDonald.
Yeah, coming over as a supplemental ad, previously having been on the Blues. Brisbane, of course, is reeling in the aftermath of not only blowing the game against the Blues, but losing Kadeem Coleman for the year to an ACL injury. That just really hurts.
And it just sucks because he's been enjoyable to watch.
Their best defender during finals last year.
And it was like not quite filling the Daniel Rich role because Daniel Rich was more, big booming kicks. But he was...
And more inside than out?
Yeah, but he was a ball-moving defender. And his actual defending was pretty nice, too.
Yeah, has been able to play above his size. That's one thing I've always noted about Coleman. And that's going to be something that's hard to replace for them. It's going to be a struggle for them throughout the year. Connor McKenna will likely be able to come in, returning from his hamstring injury. But do you get some other support there at halfback? We talked about maybe Jackson Pryor or Jimmy Madden in our opening round preview, and neither featured. So I thought, I know Fagan was talking about positional versatility, but using all of Gardner, Payne, and Lester seemed a little strange. Yeah, I mean, Lester has that accelerating ability, and if Gardner is cast forward again, maybe trying to take out one of the few decent defenders that Frio has back there, I mean, I could see all of them still getting in.
Well, what it could do, it does, if someone doesn't get hurt, it gives you some substitute flexibility as well. That's something where positional versatility definitely helps.
And the other thing that I could think is, yes, Dane Zorko is able to venture forward, but I remember he'd been trialed at halfback in like 2022 especially, and that had worked. So maybe there will be some more responsibility behind the ball and in the defensive half for their former captain.
Speaking of Zorko, he was involved in a lot of shithousery last year. He didn't have any in opening round. Does he have some this week? Or is this going to be just a year where he kind of tones it down, kind of like Toby Green?
Well, the difference is Zorko's no longer the captain, so you'd think that would give him more license to do shit.
Yeah, so...
Okay, you know what? Zorko's going to have an early center bounce attendance where he really fucking gets into it with Andrew Brayshaw.
Okay. And then, I think there's tons of opportunity. A week later, he's got, after the bye, I think, because they have a round 2 bye, right?
Yeah, I think, and then they've got Holy Thursday.
Yeah, so then you get Braden Maynard. So,
I mean, that's it obvious.
There's opportunities for Zorko things to happen.
I'm just going to say it right now. Holy Thursday, the Lions should just exit the locker room and come onto the field, not even wearing their jumpers.
Ooh, that would be fun.
It's time for some shirts versus skins footy.
It would also be fun, especially, imagine if they lose this week and then you have fans doing the "you're not fit to wear the shirt" chant. Let's see, other Brisbane injury news real quick. Tom Duday could be available by the end of the month, which is extraordinarily quick.
So make the most out of this time if you get it, Ryan Lester.
Now, do you keep Kai Lolan as the sub with McKenna, kind of being a fit to replace Coleman, or do you elevate him and move someone else to the sub role? If Sean Darcy was healthy, you'd have to probably ask the Darcy Fort questions.
But we don't have to ask the Darcy Fort questions here, especially also with Joe Danaher really cementing himself as the second ruck. So if anything, I could see Darcy Gardner being the one to get subbed out, especially if the Lions feel comfortable in the forward 50. I feel like he would just kind of be like a surplus everywhere else on the oval, and then you'd be able to get some good midfield minutes into somebody like Lohman. But if Lohman is in the 22, then it does allow for Zorko to slide back. So it's a question of how much positional versatility.
The more I think about it, between just the direction Frio's trended in and last week for Brisbane, plus some of their lineup weirdness, this game just has weird vibes written all over it. And I think whoever loses will have some really bad vibes to deal with. Again, Brisbane would be 0-2 heading into hosting Collingwood. Freo next week, they go to Marvel to play North, so they have round 2 with North again. And we know how that went last year. And then they host the Crows. I think just maybe in a couple weeks we'll say everything's fine in Freo, or maybe the vibes will be very weird and
Justin Longmuir's head will soon be on a plate.
Yeah, I think if you had to take odds on first coach to be gone this year, I would think it would be him to lead the pack there, right?
Well, look at who else you have there on the bottom part of the ladder.
Yeah.
Unless the bottom falls out at Port and they suddenly reverse course on Hakeley, there's really no one else who's like a clear sacking candidate.
Maybe weird shit happens at Melbourne that stems from the Joel Smith thing. That's the only other thing I can even think of.
Yeah, but in terms of like just true on-field product, Longmuir would be the easy bet there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Ethan, you had a really interesting main character pick last week, and as we wrap things up here, I want to know just like how crazy are you going this week? Or are you just going to reel it in and go with an actual player? Because, I mean, you really highlighted guys like Zorko, for example, in this conversation.
Yeah, I'm just going to go with Zorko. He seems like a safe bet. Although, if I want to go for a really range pick, it can be something with the grounds crew or curators. Something with a playing surface. I feel like that's like one of those safe bets. It's like kind of like Homer Simpson's fortune cookies. You know, like you will be enticed by a shampoo commercial.
You will find true love on Flag Day. Speaking of Flag Day, then, kind of got me thinking about that Collingwood and Sydney game. I think we're going to just see some weirdness there, like not like shithousery, but just weird enough stuff happening that, you know what? I think it's Tom Mitchell. I think Tom Mitchell has just got some potential to just be a real focus in this game, especially at center bounces and with his father having played for the Swans, initially having been a father-son pick for Sydney. His Sydney time is just very much forgotten in the context of his Brownlow winning performance at Hawthorn and now what he's done at Collingwood. But I don't know, I think Mitchell's going to be playing this game with a lot of spite and a lot of edge, maybe also stemming from being subbed off last week. And I think he's going to be a focus.
Ooh, I got one. You know how there was like the thing with, the padding affecting like a goal or a behind? How about the laces on a Sharon come loose? And I don't know if it means that one of them, like the longer, loose lace touches a goalpost or if it just leads to a weird kick or something. But, it's like every few years you see the seams get fucked up on a baseball during a game.
I remember something with like Pedro Alvarez trying to throw one of those one time and just being like super confused.
Yeah, something weird seemed to happen with the laces on a Sharon.
All right, this is a long preview. We're still trying to feel out like what the real length of these should be going in with.
Yeah, but I feel like this was good discussion instead of just us reading stuff off.
Yeah, so I think more of that, but just maybe kind of refining things, trying to speed things up a little because, again, these are previews.
But I think we had a lot of good discussion about, like the vibes of different teams and some of the matchup stuff. And I think we were able to discuss things that you aren't going to get in a lot of other places. And that's kind of our selling point.
Hopefully that's the case. And hopefully our talking points on Twitter at Americans Footy follow along with that.
Don't forget, I am on Twitter at Castle Media.
I am at BenjaminHK01.
Brian Harambe is on Instagram at CatNameDRyan. He is currently sitting on my bed. We are also on YouTube and Instagram. We are not on TikTok. Maybe you'll find us on OnlyFans at some point. Oh, I'm also on Cameo.
Yes, are you on Swish yet?
No, I'm just on Cameo. What even is my app there? I have to pull it up to check. Nobody's requested one yet, but a couple people have promised they will, like for a friend's birthday. It's at Ethan Castle Sports.
And now I gotta go pack.